What does it mean to have a growth mindset, and how do we foster this in our students? Today we will look at the research behind this trend and the impact it has on student learning. Even if we don't realize it, we all hold beliefs about intelligence, and those implicit beliefs affect our learning in profound ways. First, some terminology. Entity theorists view intelligence as a fixed, static trait. This is often called a fixed mindset. They focus on judgment and evaluation and interpret failures as reflecting their lack of intelligence. They tend to attribute successes and failures to global, stable factors. This can manifest in very different ways in the classroom. This can look like the class know-it-all or the quiet child's shrinking into the corner, as entity theorists are vulnerable to a helpless reaction. More on that to come. On the other hand, incremental theorists view intelligence as malleable and dynamic. They are oriented toward growth and development, so this is commonly referred to as a growth mindset. They interpret failures as a cue to focus on effort and strategy, and they attribute outcomes to unstable, controllable factors that they can do something about. They display mastery-oriented thinking, which has a huge impact on achievement, as we will see. Entity theorists with a fixed mindset and incremental theorists with a growth mindset set very different types of achievement goals. Those with a fixed mindset tend to set ability goals. For them, school is a performance. This can look like the show-off, whose purpose is to validate their ability, or the kid who avoids eye contact and is suddenly very engrossed in examining their cuticles when you ask a difficult question. Their purpose is to avoid revealing a lack of ability to you or their peers. On the other hand, mastery-oriented thinkers or incremental theorists are more likely to set learning goals about the task or mastering a skill, where the purpose is to acquire new skills and knowledge. This creates differing views on effort. Entity theorists view effort as a measure of intellectual ability. They believe a need for hard work shows a lack of ability. This makes them minimize and trivialize effort. On the other hand, incremental theorists, with their growth mindset view effort as a tool for learning and believe hard work is what supports and creates intelligence. Therefore, they place high value on effort. As humans, we are going to fail. It is a fact of life, and it is inevitable. How we respond to failure is what matters. Those with a fixed mindset, our entity theorists, are more likely to exhibit the helpless response to failure, also known as learned helplessness. This is extremely disheartening to see, and it is characterized by declining effort and lower persistence, stagnating problem-solving approaches, diminishing performance, plunging expectations, causal attributions for failure such as lack or loss of ability, a desire to escape from the task, physically or cognitively through task-irrelevant statements, avoidance of challenge, negative emotions, and self-disparagement and self-condemnation. Those exhibiting helplessness tend to forget or disregard prior successes as irrelevant to future. They feel helpless and just shut down. In bright contrast to this is the persistent response to failure that our mastery-oriented thinkers, our growth mindset crowd, displays. In the face of failure, these people show increasing effort and concentration, sustained or enhanced problem-solving approaches, improved performance, optimism and confidence, positive emotions, constructive self-talk, instruction and monitoring, and higher persistence in response to the challenge. They do not consider their mistakes to be failures, and therefore do not make attributions for failing. They remember prior successes and anticipate future success. Obviously, a persistent response is much more productive to learning in the classroom and out. But can a fixed mindset be changed, be unfixed? Once helplessness has been learned, can it be unlearned? In a pivotal study, Dweck showed that yes, through attributional retraining, kids exhibiting a helpless response could indeed learn and exhibit a persistent response. By the end of the training, all subjects in the attributional retraining treatment showed either negligible impairment following failure or actual improvement following failure. This is huge for education. In 1990, Henderson and Dweck looked at middle school kids and found that students' theories of intelligence were the best predictor of their grades, more so than previous grades and achievement test scores. Entity theorists, the fixed mindset kids, declined in class standing overall, and incremental theorists, those with a growth mindset, rose. Entity theorists attributed failure to low intelligence, whereas incremental theorists attributed to effort or strategy, things that change. In 1997, Sorich and Dweck found even if kids had virtually identical achievement scores and confidence levels before middle school, those with a growth mindset earned significantly higher grades in their junior high years. Helpless and mastery-oriented responses are evident in social situations as well, and emerge at a young age. In 1992, Heyman, Dweck, and Kane studied kindergarteners. Helpless kids punished their dolls after failure, whereas mastery-oriented kids gave their dolls effort and strategy feedback. In a vicious cycle, entity theorists want to avoid failure, but behave in ways that increase its likelihood. In 1994, Rodewalk found that entity theorists engage in more self-handicapping behaviors, like procrastination or withdrawing effort, which jeopardize their chances for success, but provide face-saving excuses should failure occur. How do these beliefs develop in children? How they are criticized greatly impacts how they respond to future setbacks. In 1998, Mueller and Dweck found that judgmental criticism on child's traits, or the child as a whole, set up a strong helpless reaction to later setbacks, whereas non-judgmental criticism, indicating more effort or a new strategy was needed, fostered a mastery-oriented reaction to later failures. This shows that these coping styles are the product of beliefs and expectations, which can be fostered by others, parents, teachers, etc. This analysis of criticism is important to note, but feels somewhat obvious to many. Of course you shouldn't tell a child they are dumb, right? What is less intuitive is the effect of praise on how children will handle future setbacks. In the same study, Mueller and Dweck found that in every case, praise for the child as a whole or for their traits, person praise, significantly created greater helpless response to later setbacks. Praise for effort and energy, process praise, consistently created mastery-oriented responses. This is huge. It is very natural for parents to say things like, "You're so smart, so athletic, so artistic, etc." We think that this is building confident kids. But if kids learn that their successes are because of personal characteristics, then they are set up to believe their failures are too, which has profound negative effect. In 1999, Kamins and Dweck looked at kindergarten children and found that person praise, when succeeding, made children see later mistakes as failures, and children receiving person praise gave lower self-assessments, had lower persistence, and had more negative affect in the face of failure. This can create a sense of contingent self-worth and helplessness in kids. How then should we praise? We can foster mastery-oriented thinking and a growth mindset by showing enthusiasm for the product, finding aspects of the product to ask about and compliment, inquiring about how the child came up with the ideas and made choices and compliment those, and by focusing on the processes used and the child's active role in the accomplishment. Additionally, we can foster this when we focus on the meaningful aspects of the learning activity, not the performance. Help students develop and implement effective learning strategies. Provide choices where decisions are based on effort, not ability. Help students develop self-management and monitoring skills. Focus on individual improvement, progress, and mastery. Recognize and commend students' efforts, and encourage students to view mistakes as learning opportunities.